Blessings. Welcome, 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 welcome. Good to see you all here. Yes, what a blessing to be able to meet in this way. Okay, so we have a couple of announcements. The first is we have a retreat coming up, August 23rd through the 25th, and I hope you can join. In this retreat, we're going to focus on the 7 chakra centers and investigating them so that we can more fully inhabit all of ourself. So most of us are familiar with the mental center and or the third eye and the heart. And some of us are familiar with the hara, but we're going to investigate all 7 centers more fully and work with inhabiting them and looking at the shadow and the wounding that tends to create difficulty in each of the centers, and look at the egoic manifestation. And of course, what we're really interested in is the divine manifestation. But a big part of knowing oneself is this recognition that we are divine. But what does it actually look like? What does that actually mean? How does it manifest? Most of us, when we look inside, we recognize that there's a lot of egoic identification here. And so in this next retreat, we're going to explore other ways to know ourselves beyond our egoic nature. So I do hope you can join. This coming Sunday, which I believe is August 4th, I don't think I'll be having satsang. I think I'm going to be traveling that day, unfortunately. I might hop on and pull it off last minute. And if I do, I'll put a note in Facebook. But chances are I won't be here August 4th. Okay, I will be here the rest of the time. And of course, we have this big retreat, another big retreat coming up. So I hope you can join that. I think that's everything. Okay, so please let us begin by shutting down our eyes, fully arriving here in this moment, in this body. And just as a matter of inquiry and contemplation, I'm going to invite you just to notice, to acknowledge how, where you identify, like what you identify as. So as you feel around inside, I want you to just to notice the identity that comes to the surface first. So is the first thing you notice a Buddha, a goddess, or is the first thing you notice, um, some form of grumpiness or agitation or some type of, often when we identify with our ego as some kind of deficiency. I'm not feeling like I'm enough, or I feel like I am this pain body. Or what is it that you feel that you are? That you feel that you are. You might be driving around in a car in traffic right now, racing to get here or there. You may be wondering, well, what am I? What is this thing that I am? Is there a me here that's fighting against the world, or something that argues? And if you can, I'm going to invite you to just type in the chat and let's just see what comes up. See what comes up. If you don't feel like typing in the chat, you can just stay with your experience because we're going to deepen. But I just want to see, what's the first thing that comes up when you feel into yourself, into your body? What do you know yourself as? I have this little puppy, and I doubt that he thinks of himself as a puppy. Like he probably thinks of himself as a ball of light, a ball of energy, a ball of aliveness. But come on, don't be shy. I want someone, at least a couple people to play with me here. Put something in the chat of what you know yourself to be. And so if you know yourself as a Buddha or as a goddess, that's beautiful. Anne writes energy. So Anne feels herself as energy. Good. Good. Who else? Laura writes awareness. Jennifer, peaceful. I said, well, you guys are doing good. Justina, earth goddess. Yeah. Blair is writing fear, shame, and confused. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Good. Uh, I'm something big. That is what Terry writes. I'm something big that I don't understand. I only see a small part of me. The rest is mysterious. Vivian writes, not been able to show enough love. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's play with these. And so let's continue, closing our eyes again and just feeling around in our body. And if you know yourself as peace or as light, as energy, as love, I'm going to invite you to let that expand and include all of yourself. Include all the body, all the consciousness. And if you feel yourself in any type of deficient state, less than or not enough, or you feel fear, confusion, or any tension in the body, for those of you feeling really full of energy and light, if you feel any tension in the body, we're going to breathe into anything difficult, anything contracted. We're just going to give it a little bit of time and a little bit of space. And if there's confusion here, like Blair was writing, I'm going to see if you want to invite you to feel more fully into your body. Often confusion lives in the mind. If we come down into the heart, to the belly, and again, like we're going to explore in this upcoming retreat, sometimes on the surface of the chakras, there can be emotion. But if you descend more deeply into the center, so why don't we all meet in the heart and descend into the center of the heart? And as you do so, you might find yourself feeling more peaceful, more loving, more compassionate. Now, on the surface of the heart, you might feel emotion. But if you descend deep into the heart, you may begin to notice a greater sense of unity and unification. And I'm going to invite this unity to begin to spread throughout the body. It's the nature of the heart, it's the nature of inclusivity. And so let us invite this love in our heart to spread out and to triumph over any pain, to triumph over any darkness. If there's any negativity floating around in our mind, we're going to place our attention on love, on the prevailing nature of love, the triumphant nature of love. If you give love long enough time with anything difficult, it will triumph in the most difficult, painful, confused things in our life. If you give it enough time and space. love will triumph. And if you find yourself in a moment right now, and you're feeling that you're struggling, can you breathe here more fully? Can you soften more fully? Can you open more fully? Inviting the body to relax, to receive, to be held in this space of love. To be held in this space of love. Now taking a couple more deep breaths and relaxing the mind more fully, the throat more fully, the chest more fully, solar plexus more fully, the hara more fully, pelvis more fully, arms, the hands, the legs, the feet. Okay, beautiful, 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 beautiful. So let us keep opening to love. And if you like, you can gently open your eyes. And yes, I welcome you into this space. And so, sometimes I wonder, well, what will I speak about for satsang? Well, Kyle sent me this fun question, and it almost just, it sounded like he was putting me up for a joke. He said, Craig, how does one know when one is awake? Like, how do we know when we're awake? And so we could ask, well, what does it mean to be awake? And I like, just short, short, quick answers because it gets right to the point. And, Zen has always been good with the short, quick answers. And so to be awake, according to Zen, is to see clearly, to be able to see clearly, to see clearly. And we could say, well, like, that doesn't sound exciting. Like what most people want as a definition of spiritual awakening is, I never will feel pain again. And I'll tell you, good luck. Good luck with that one. Good luck. Like that's what the ego wants. And that's just a spiritualized version of the fight or flight response. Like, I never want to feel anything uncomfortable again. That's not what being awake is about. When someone is awake, they see clearly. They see clearly. They see the truth instead of seeing the bias and the prejudice of their own mind. They see the truth within themselves, within the world, within all of life. And that's a big thing, of course, to be able to see the truth. To see the truth. Now, if we were a psychic, we might want to know the future. We might think that that's what it means to be awake, but that's not what it means to be awake. To be awake, we see things as they are, without prejudice, without laying a big, thick, heavy projection on it. And, like at this moment in history, with so much information on the internet, and with so much division within the political worlds, it seems that the political world is just projected onto everything. Onto everything. There's all these ideas of how we should be, what we can say, what we can't say, who's on the right side of history, who's on the wrong side of history. And there's all this fighting, and it's very difficult to see clearly when we have a world that is just projecting these two big worldviews. One, somehow a liberal worldview, which now is like the party of war, which makes no sense to me. And then there's this conservative worldview, which is this different kind of worldview. And it's like we get so lost in these views. But the question is can we see clearly without conservatism, without liberalism, without all this bias and this prejudice and all this conditioning from the internet telling us how we're supposed to think, how we're supposed to vote, how we're supposed to speak, how we're supposed to be in the world, who we are supposed to accept, who we're not supposed to accept. When we see life clearly, there's an acceptance of life, a total acceptance that this is how life is right here in this moment. This is how life is. When we're not awake, we comment on and complain about how life is, and we ask for it to be different. And so when one is awake, we're not asking for life to be different. Now, let me clarify that. We see it, we accept it. Now, we may be on the side of evolution, but, and by that I mean, of course, we're hoping for greater evolution. We're hoping that love will triumph. We're hoping that something greater will come, but we're also fully accepting this is how the world is right now. Doesn't mean we don't work for change. We can work for change, because that's a different type of enlightenment. The willingness to continually grow and to open and to follow God's will, to be a conduit for God's will to become manifest through you, through life, through your words, through your speech, through your actions, through your behavior. And so, in this very basic Zen way, we step back, we just see life as it is, and we accept it. We accept that death is a part of life, that old age is a part of life, that disease is a part of life, that boo-boos are a part of life. I busted my lip this weekend, and Friday afternoon, I about knocked all my teeth out in the front of my face. And it's just, and I accept that, I accept, okay, like boo-boos are a part of life. Right? I had all this blood. I thought I was going to have to get a bunch of stitches, but luckily my face is healing quickly. But we accept that having a body and getting hurt is a part of life. It's a part of life. And when we see clearly, we see that, yes, disaster happens sometimes. But when we truly see, when we know the truth, we know that love will triumph, healing will triumph, the sun will shine another day. We see that the world is growing and evolving. And we have a total faith in this, even on the darkest days, even on the darkest days. I had this very interesting experience with my daughter. And I told you all this, I think. This was many years ago, maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago. But I was with my wife and my daughter, and we were in the redwoods. And I have this old van, and I broke the key off in the ignition, but the van wasn't on. And so here we were, and I had like a broken key, and we were like stuck in this park up by Crescent City there. But we were, I don't know, maybe 20 miles south of Crescent City. So kind of in the middle of nowhere on the Redwood coast there. Long story short, I was just I got pretty stressed out because it was late. It was like a Saturday or a Sunday. There wasn't any cell service. And, I needed to get a locksmith to come out and make a new key. And all I had was like a broken piece of a key, like a broken sliver of a key. My little girl, she started to get, she saw her dad stressed out, and I was just stressed out because, we were in the woods, and my wife and daughter, I think we had our dogs with us. It was hot. And it was just like, I was like, dang, this is going to be a big mess if we don't get this fixed real quick. And so I got a little stressed out, and, it's kind of like running around trying to find just like a teeny little cell spot that, I couldn't even make a phone call. I think I just had to send a text message. But anyways, she started to get really nervous, and she started to break down. And, she thought it was the end of the world, that we we're all going to die or something. And I was just like, sweetie, it's okay. Like, we're going to be fine. Dad's just like a little stressed out because it's getting late. And I just want to, like, this has got to get handled, or, or daddy's going to be hitchhiking somewhere, to go make a phone call and get some help. And that's going to be, I don't want to leave you guys here. Anyways, but she had like this moment of trauma where she got worked up in her mind. And since then, she's had some issues around just cars and cars breaking down and being out. Like today, we were really far out in the backcountry, and we were doing some 4x4, and we had to go on a 4x4 trail to get up to the trail. So 4x4 road, excuse me, to get to the trailhead. And it was just a much rougher road than I had remembered. I haven't been on this mountain road in about 10 years or so. And I took our little trusty Subaru up there, and I really wanted to be in an old Jeep. I didn't want to be in a Subaru that wasn't high enough off the ground. Anyways, so she started crying, and she started freaking out. And, I'm like, hey, sweetie, like, what's going on? What's going on? And she's telling me how scared she is, how worried she is. I'm like, sweetheart, like, it is going to be okay. Her mom's telling her it's going to be okay. We're comforting her. But you see, she has this memory, just this memory of a moment in history where life appeared difficult. And like, if I really reflect upon this, my child is so sheltered. Like, she hasn't had any great traumas in life. These are just like imagined traumas. But anyways, she got real nervous, and she let the past take over the present moment. And when we're not awake, this is what happens all day long. Our past, it lives through us. It overshadows the present moment. We cannot see clearly in the present moment. We can't see clearly. And so, I can tell you there were these teenage boys out there on the road, and they had like a real similar Subaru as us. It's like the #1 car in Colorado is a Subaru something. And these teenage boys, they had the same clearance that I had. They're like racing up and down the road and peeling out and, running into things and having a good old time. And, the difference was the teenage boys, they didn't have this traumatic worldview being projected onto the present moment. They had teenage worldview being projected on the present moment, which was recklessness. So it's a different type of conditioning. And so, to be awake is to be in this unconditioned state where you see clearly. And so from my perspective, I'm driving the car on a 4x4 road, and I see it's dangerous, but it's not that dangerous. Like if I hit the oil pan and, or the transfer case or whatever, I get myself in trouble. I'm going to call a friend and a tow truck, and I'm going to have a big mess on my hands, but big picture, like, I know it's going to be okay. I'm fundamentally okay, And I'm so okay that I can get involved in some adventure. When we're not awake, there's a voice in our head that is always telling us that we are in danger, we're not safe, we should be worried. Those are kind of like the fear voices. There's also the voices of just confusion, which is like just lots of divided, confused voices all coming at the same time. And someone wrote, there could be shame, voice of shame. So shame often comes through our parents telling us that we are wrong in one way or another, and we shouldn't be the way we are. There can be, guilt complexities within the mind that cloud our vision. And there can be these deficiencies, these feelings that I am not enough. And in order to believe, to experience that I am not enough, you have to be disconnected from your heart. You have to be disconnected from your strength. You have to be connected from the quiet clarity, the quiet innocence and purity of your mind. When you're connected to the quiet innocence and purity of your mind, you're not thinking I'm not enough. You're thinking all is good. All is well. Life is beautiful. And so when we're awake, this is what we see. We see the beauty of life. And then occasionally you might see these little ornery characters that come up and cause some chaos and some confusion. But most of the time, you see big picture that life is fundamentally good. And you have this feeling of basic trust. Basic trust. And so then, after we finally got to the trailhead and, we started going on a hike, my little girl was saying like, she hadn't been on this hike before. And so she wants to know, how long is it going to take? How far is it? Are we almost there yet, Dad? It's like, no, we got a little bit longer to go. But at the beginning of the hike, the forest ranger put a picture of a bear. He said, you are entering bear country. And so my daughter is on this hike and she's all nervous about the bear going to gobble us up. And I'm like, sweetie, it's okay. We're not going to get eaten by the bear. Like, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And see, sometimes life will show us a picture of a bear. And then we're scared the entire time. We're in the wilderness. But when you are awake in the wilderness, you look around and you see there's no bear. There's no cat. The cat's really the thing you need to be worried about. But there's no cat. And so I'm going to keep walking. And I'm going to smile and I'm going to feel the unity of nature, the beauty of nature. I'm going to see and experience and feel the beauty of God's creation. But when we have these projections, we have all these divided thoughts. When we're disconnected from our power, we're not awake. We're identified with ego. And ego is a creature of habit. It loves to spin the same story over and over again. It likes to remind us again and again and again about the bear. About the bear. The bear is going to eat us up. Justina writes, I encounter bears all the time here, but they don't attack humans. Yeah. And so like normally the only time a bear is going to attack a human is if you get in between a mama bear and her cubs. As long as you're not doing that, the bear is going to leave you alone. Now, if you're up in Alaska and dealing with grizzlies, well, that's a different story, but we're not in Alaska. We're not in Alaska. So it's important. Like the number one thing with being awake is just this basic question. Am I seeing life clearly? Clearly. From a place of love, from a place of truth, from a place of power, from a place of clarity. Am I seeing life clearly? Am I seeing it truthfully? And we all know this dance of like, if we've ever been hurt by someone, it's so very difficult if you've been hurt by someone to see this human being in a neutral way. It's very difficult to see them from a place of neutrality, from a place of equanimity. It's very difficult to see their true divine nature when someone has hurt you. You know, if someone hurts you, we're like, oh, that guy's a scumbag. He's a, he's no good, is what we say. He's a jerk. Well, he may be a jerk in his outward expression, but in his highest truth, this is God in human form. Now, he may not show you his highest aspect of his divinity. He may just show you his egoic nature. And so when we are awake, we are often challenged to continue to see someone's divinity despite their outward expression. Now, this is something that Jesus was so excellent at, so excellent, so proficient at. You know, there was the tax collector and the people who had gone mad and lost their minds, the people who were sick, the child who was, who was perceived to be dead. And Jesus responded with love to all of them, to the untouchables. And so when we're awake, we see the divinity of all beings. All beings. Doesn't necessarily mean you want to do business with every human being. Like the other day I was with my daughter and we were riding our bikes to the farmer's market, and I saw there was a group of people in the bushes by the river, and they were doing some drugs. And it's like, I don't need to do any business with these folks. I don't need to walk down and be like, I see your divinity. I want to keep pedaling on by because I have my little girl with me. We're going to avoid any trouble, from the local hoodlums. It's like we're not going to get involved with nonsense. But if God puts me in a position to be involved, then of course my job is to stand up and speak the truth, or live the truth, or share the truth, or to listen to the truth. Sometimes our job is simply to sit back and listen and receive. So another way that we know we are awake is when there's one voice in our head. Now, a lot of people, when they initially wake up, the first thing they see is how inwardly divided they are. Like, oh my God, I have all these competing voices in my head. And really, that's just like a form of witnessing consciousness, but people call that waking up. When we're truly awake, like when the awakening has solidified, and there's only one voice within us. Occasionally there might be a little splintered off voice that comes forward, but it's coming forward and we see it, we meet it with love, we help it to heal and integrate. And we all have our growing edge. But some of us, we might have 3 voices in our head, or 4 voices. We might have 7 different voices, and they're all arguing and competing, what Freud would call like all these unresolved conflicts inside. When we're truly awake, truly enlightened, the conflict has fallen away. Now, in the initial stages of awakening, like we might go from being a sleepwalker, just knowing we're a miserable human being, and then we wake up, and as we wake up, we might see, oh, there's all these roots of misery. There's a critic, and there's a judge, and there's someone who hates herself, and there's someone who's attacking himself, and there's someone who thinks they're the best, and someone who thinks they're the worst, and someone who thinks they have to be right all the time or they won't be loved. And another part of you may think you need 10,000 followers on Instagram, and that means something to you. And so as we first wake up, we might realize, oh my God, there's so much division here. And as we work with that division, we bring a sense of unity consciousness so that we are left with one voice, a voice of truth, a voice of clarity, a voice of love. Another way we speak about being awake is to be uncorrupted. And that's similar to being unconditioned, like we're not conditioned by life, we're not corrupted by our own trauma mind, we're not corrupted by the news, we're not corrupted by the chaos of this world. You may see the chaos, but you respond from a place of truthfulness. And this response is often quite different than the ego response. The ego response is often in reaction to, my parents are conservative, and so as a reaction, I'm going to be a liberal hippie. It's like, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them. But again, it's like, this is all unconscious movement when we act in this way. Part of being awake is the light shines into our unconscious. You see the unconscious. You see its movements, you see its roots, you see its deficiency. You see all these little desires within it. And again, you choose to respond with love. With love. This one came up, and people gave me a really hard time when I said I went and had some blood taken, and I had some fear within me about the nurse with the needle, even though she did such an excellent job. But like, I've had a lot of trauma with needles. I have these veins that don't like to give out blood for some reason. I don't know what it is about my body, but and I've had people just miss the vein and stick the needle in and just move it all over the place. And I had one nurse do 5 different gauge needles on me, and my arm just like wouldn't produce any blood. Just like nothing would come out. It was like my body was like, nope, I'm not giving up any blood today. As a kid, I was poked and prodded so much, and so I have this trauma around needles. But then I've been on the acupuncture table more times than I can count, and I've gotten so many needles there. And sometimes those needles feel delicious, and sometimes those ones really hurt too. But anyways, so the fearlessness is really around psychological suffering. The great Krishnamurti, I think he said this once. He said something like, the only true fear is the fear of heights. And I have no idea why he said that, except for maybe because he had the fear of heights. Because me, I have very little fear of heights. I was on a cliff today, that had like a 1,000-foot drop off of it. And I was like right on the edge of that thing. And, it's like, I could sit there all day. I can climb mountains, and I can climb up huge ladders and this and that, and trees and whatever. But heights doesn't scare me. But someone poking my arm and rattling around looking for some blood, like that might turn me pale. But the other day, I sat down and I tried something new, and the nurse showed me that a good experienced nurse can do it in a painless way. She got all the blood out of me, and I don't even know how it happened. I was like, that was quick and painless. And so with the fearlessness part, To be awake is to be fearless in regards to psychological fear. So fear of the past, fear of the future, making up stories in our head. You know, I know a number of people in the song have already come to me and said, if so-and-so gets elected, I'm leaving the country. It's like, okay. It's like, well, you don't have to. You don't have to. Like, we don't have to get that crazy just yet. We can just breathe and relax and see what comes. See what comes. See what comes. And part of being fearless is when things do come into this world that are difficult, it doesn't mean we need to run right away. Sometimes our job is to stand up and to fight. Fight for the truth. Fight for justice. Fight for a greater life, or stand our ground and outlive whatever perceived psychological pain or whatever real life pain there was. You know, again, just to use my silly example of going to the getting lab work done. I guess that's the word for that. Getting a bunch of blood taken out. And to be able to face it. You might squirm in your chair a little bit, but saying like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Even if the body squirms a little bit. No body wants to experience pain. But the fearlessness is a willingness to face it. Doesn't mean that fear doesn't exist, doesn't arise. In some cases, it may not arise. But in other cases, it might arise with your evolving edge. You might have some fear arise, but you choose to face it. You choose to face it with an open heart. And you see, like, is this really that bad? Is this really that bad? Do I have to run away? Do I have to freak out? Do I have to make a big story? Or can I experience the thing, take a deep breath, maybe have a big cry, and then realize I'm okay. I'm okay. And there's this funny thing that happens when you face something like really intensely. Really intensely. Like sometimes your body might get worked up emotionally. You might have a big cry afterwards. But the question is did you go forward? Did you open to the truth? Despite your body having a moment. That's okay. It's okay for the body to have a moment. Sometimes people think that, you know, to be free means you never feel anything. You never get riled up a little bit. I get riled up all the time. The question is, can you come back down? Can you come back down? And sometimes it's fun just to get worked up, to get excited. My wife, she can get so excited about anything. Me, it takes a little something to get me riled up. Okay. David Morris writes, psych experiments with infants have shown they can see and avoid the edge of a drop or a cliff. They concluded the fear of heights is inherent. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it should be. And so like, that's a good fear to have. It's a good fear to have. But that type of fear is just the baby backing away. And then recognize, okay, like if I fall off this, I'll be in danger. I'll be in danger. But you know, what I was speaking about is, can you stand on the edge of the cliff and relax and breathe and see the vast expanse of nature of reality? But a lot of people can't stand on the edge of the cliff. They're like, oh my God, like, what if the wind blows me off and this and that? Or, you know, you start thinking up scenarios in their mind. And again, that's psychological fear. We're just making things up, making things up. If you stand on the edge of the cliff and your feet are solid, there's no worry here. The ground is safe. Sit, stand, enjoy the immense expanse of beauty. Immense expanse of beauty. Just don't take a selfie and fall off that cliff and be one of those people. Be one of those people. It's good to have fear to protect you sometimes. Okay. Another quality of being awake not only is like the ability to see clearly, but the willingness to feel what's here. And again, like we have all these fairy tales about enlightenment, meaning that, that the sage woke up and then they no longer felt an emotion ever again. They were some kind of Zen robot. But no, when we're awake, like if your child dies, that'd be a terrible thing. But actually, one of my neighbors, she lost her child this week, and an older child, like a kid in her 20s, went to school with my daughter, but a friend of mine, she lost her kid. And sometimes being awake is a willingness just to have a total open heart and to grieve fully, to admit fully, I am human. There's a human here in this life. It hurts. And to admit that. And this is a paradox, is to be willing to admit and feel and experience the totality of the pain of life and to not turn away from it. To not turn away from it. But also to not get lost in it, to not get swallowed up by it. Excuse me. Like when my father died, I got the news and I fell on the ground. I started weeping. My heart was open. It felt the pain of the loss of my father. My father died suddenly, and it was unexpected. He just kind of just like went just like that. And so it was a shock. It was a shock to my system. It was a shock to just my humanity. But because I'm open, I just laid there and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And then when you see great pain in the world, like when you see this silly, insane war in Ukraine or in Israel, or you see death and destruction, if your heart is open, there's a good chance you'll cry, you'll grieve. You'll grieve. And sometimes like that's the only sane thing to do when we see this thing called war. When we see this thing called war, is we grieve. And at other moments, the only sane thing may be to walk away from the war. And from a different moment, a different time in life, the only sane thing may be to get up and fight. And see, with being awake means that you are tuned into the mind and the intelligence of God. And you know when to fight, when to surrender, when to grieve. And that's not something we think about. That's not something we sort out philosophically. That's something that life instructs us to do. And to be awake is to be able to listen to the truth on the deepest level. And the truth, the truth is a wild thing. The truth is a wild thing. Sometimes it may ask you to fight. And other days it may ask you to lay down your weapons. And you might not always know why. You might not always know why. You might not always know why. And so there's this quality to it. Terry brought it up. There's this mystery to it. a mystery to it. And so can you be awake to that mystery? Can you be awake to the mystery? Okay. There's a note in the chat from Brian. Brian has a question. Hi, Brian. Let me find you here. See if I can unmute you here. Brian, what's your question?
There you go. Hi, Craig. We haven't met before, but I've seen you many times.
Brian,
And
where do you live?
I'm in Seattle.
In Seattle. All right. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, what's on your mind?
so I have a lifelong resistance that has been a lot of what you were talking about, a resistance story that keeps coming. And I need,
Resistance to? You don't have to go into all the details, but just give me a sense of what we're talking about here.
yeah, it's a real sense of rejection and powerlessness
Okay.
from as long as I can remember growing
And were
up.
you the one that emailed the question in?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, I was going to get your question. There's a part of it that I didn't understand. So,
Okay.
so lay it out for me a little bit here. So, a resistance to, you said rejection?
Yeah, it it really started as I show up in this life. I'm raised Catholic.
Okay.
I have this belief in God, this connection to God. And then a series of rejections, personal rejections happen, whether it's, somebody, a crush not returning my feelings, or my dad losing his job,
Mm-hmm.
or um, it was going to a private school and we don't have a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
but other kids do.
Sure.
And it was like one after another built up this sense of, oh, I don't measure up here, not good enough.
Mm-hmm. So,
And
yeah, so let's clarify that.
okay,
So, you're born into this world, and in this world, you experience some rejection. And what does your ego tell you about rejection? What are the conclusions that the egos come to?
I'm not good enough, and I have to be um, great. I have to be special.
I'm not good enough according to who?
This world around me, other
Okay.
kids and their families.
Okay. Did the kids and the families tell you that? They're like,
No,
hey, Brian, you are not good enough.
no.
No, they didn't tell you that. Who told you that?
Um, I did.
I told myself that. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. And so part of waking up is
yes,
us taking responsibility and us saying, okay, like we have this idea, like when we're rejected by life, that we're not good enough.
right.
But really, what life is telling us, like when it rejects us, is this isn't the right match, or now's not the time, or I don't have the energy, to fully be with you. And that's really nothing to do about you. It's everything to do about me. Like if I'm rejecting you, it's about me, not about you. But our ego is telling us that
It's
you're
all about me.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah,
you're not good enough. Okay. And so like our ego, it gets confused sometimes. And it needs to have, an identity. And so it's either going to take on the identity, like the ego plays with two big identities. I'm the best or I'm the worst. It's
yeah,
like I'm the best or I'm the worst. It's just where it goes. It's like,
yeah,
it's not a one trick pony, it's a two trick pony. It's either I'm the best or I'm the worst.
yeah.
And it creates this whole mask and this whole shell, this whole ideology that I'm not good enough. And listen, I got the I'm not good enough one too. Like that's where my ego identified also as a kid. It's just like, I'm not good enough. I don't fit in. I'm a weirdo or whatever. There's no place for me here on planet Earth. But again, like these were all just stories that my ego told me. It took me about 30 years, for me to work with this story, finally to pop the bubble, this story, and realize, oh, I don't think this story is true. I think I've been telling myself this story.
Right.
I did have a couple other people tell me the story too, to reinforce it, but I saw that they had the same disease I had, the I'm not
Yeah.
good enough story,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, okay, so tell me again, you have the
So yeah,
feeling of rejection and
and in
resistance. Yeah.
and in all that, and in the years that I've done work, I've done Byron Katie's work. I've worked with Adyashanti. I've looked for decades at this pattern. Like my mother was a very similar, not good enough. My father was very, I'll be in service to everybody else in order to be good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I see it very clearly that it's my responsibility, my story, but the response inside of me, it always happens first thing in the morning. I wake up and the first thought is, it's like an angry no, a tantrum, egoic tantrum. That's no, I don't want it to be this way. I don't want to live the rest of my life with this.
Good.
But I can't, but that story is, it's hell in my, like it's hell in my body and my back.
Sure, sure. So, okay, so
Okay,
we
go
play
ahead.
with this game where we have a life that's, let's say, unsatisfactory. Like
Yes.
we could just like use the Buddha's words,
Yeah.
life is inherently unsatisfactory. It's just like I feel a sense of misery inside, a sense of
Yes.
I'm not good enough. Okay, beautiful. And then we wake up in the morning, and then there is this angry response saying no. And what else does it say?
I don't want it to be this way.
Good, good, good. And so if our anger stops at that, no, I don't want it to be this way, and we don't go out and change in any way, we don't
Mhm.
go out and do anything different, well, we'll just be in this funny situation where we have one complex that says, I'm not good enough. And then another one that comes forward, like this other complex in response to the first one that says, no, like no.
Yeah.
So in the tantric world, I would encourage you to harness your anger. And you wrote something to me in your email about power.
Yeah.
Well, often when I teach that anger is a doorway into your power. And so when you begin to walk in the direction of your power, you begin to harness your power. You use this power in order to find the truth of what you are. The truth of what you are, of course, is this innate goodness, this innate innocence and purity, this unity with all of life. And so if we use the anger, if the anger just gets angry and we just stay in bed, we'll make ourselves sick. But if you use the anger to commit more fully to the spiritual path and do your healing work and discover the power of your anger, like the power behind it,
Uh-huh.
the power of your soul. If you just find your power, like if you ask your power, am I good enough? It's not like, no, I'm not good enough. Like your power is like, it's almost like, fuck yeah. Like, fuck yeah, I'm good enough.
Yeah.
I am this immense being of light. I am this hugeness. And so we have to learn how to work with our anger to get past the no. Because the no will just like implode and it won't move anywhere. But if
Well,
we channel that anger to say, I'm so angry, I'm going to actually do something. I'm going to actually do something different than what I've done before. And this will sound silly, but I'm going to encourage you to use your anger and this fire to help awaken you, to be able to hold a space of love and compassion for all the places within you that have been rejected. And so we channel our anger into a direction that becomes healing. Is this making sense?
um, I get stuck because when I sit with the anger myself, it
Yeah,
drops into hurt, and
good,
I let that come out too.
good, okay.
And then after that, it's kind of a neutral zone.
What does that mean, a neutral zone? So I want to tell you this, like if I sit, if I have hurt within me and I have anger on top of it, let's say I open to the anger, I'm going to feel some heat, I'm going to feel some fire. That's
Yeah.
going to make me feel very alive. And then if I notice, oh, under this heat and fire, oh my gosh, there's a great deal of sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And if I open to the sadness and I bring this heat and fire to the sadness, there's going to be this presence that is big enough to feel the sadness, to be with the sadness, to embrace the sadness. I'm probably going to have a good cry.
Mm-hmm.
And as I have a good cry, I'm going to begin to feel the sadness liberated from my being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And afterwards, I'm going to feel worthy. The reason I'll feel worthy is because I actually took the time to be with what's here. I actually took the time to see and to feel and to acknowledge what's here. This is actually the opposite energy of rejection.
Okay.
This is this quality of a total willingness to be with the fullness of my experience. Now, I can tell you this, that a lot of times when people say they drop into some level of sadness, they drop into a little bit of sadness, and then they get lost in the details of the story. And then they start spinning off saying, this shouldn't have happened. This wasn't right. This wasn't fair. And if you notice, like what I'm doing is like my hands are kind of going up. So we started with, oh my gosh, I'm in so much pain, but I feel the pain and I experience it in a felt way without a story. Then it empties out. And babies do this all the time. A baby will have a tantrum without any story. And then a couple minutes later, after the tantrum, they get up and they go play.
Right. Right.
But adults do this funny thing is when we begin to feel pain, feel our sadness, a voice will come in from the superego that'll say, this shouldn't have happened. This wasn't fair. This wasn't right. I can't believe this happened. And what that does is it actually stops us from liberating the pain. And when we stop that cycle of the pain being liberated, we're left like with this feeling of kind of being like, I don't know what's going on. Like I felt it, but nothing happened, nothing changed.
Yeah.
So when I'm speaking about this total willingness to be with what you're feeling, afterwards, you should feel at least lighter. If we don't feel lighter, it means that something isn't right. Like we haven't gone through the fullness of our experience. Is that making sense?
Yeah. Somehow I feel a little bit lighter for a little bit, but not long till I start to go back into the something's not right. Something's not
Okay,
quite
good. And so,
yeah.
so again, a couple reasons. One, we get scared and we go into the details. Or two, out of habit, we pick up the story again.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going.
And I can tell you, like I did this, like when let's just pick a moment in my history. Like when I went through a divorce, it got to this point where like I was kind of over it. Like I was actually over it mostly. But I just had the story in my head and I just kept picking up the story of life's unfair. I have no power. This isn't right, and, like my former wife, she was real good at, taking all the power. And I hadn't really stepped into my power. I'd grieved that the relationship and everything ended and was over, but I didn't step into my power.
Yeah.
I didn't have any actual behavioral change. It was
Yeah.
like I grieved kind of, but I still held on to the old story
Right.
because our ego, it just needs a story. It needs an identity. It needs a place to land. And for some people, it's like some people, their story is I've been abused. And, they hold on to that. There's people who still run I'm a Vietnam veteran. And it's like, man, the Vietnam War ended in like 1970, what,
Yeah.
5, 6, something, like, I don't know, but it's like, that's a long time ago. We don't still need to be veterans and hanging out at that damn bar,
Right.
and
Right.
talking about what our experience was in 1972 when we were on the whatever it was, when we were in the jungle. Like, we need to let that story die and a new story come forward. And part of being awake is being courageous enough to see in this moment and perhaps to even create a new story, a story of truth, instead of having this old story that I am the rejected one. And so sometimes it's just a matter of like, like we work out, but we still eat garbage food. It's just
Right.
like, hey, like you work out and you eat good food.
Right.
If you work out and eat garbage food, like you might not feel like $1,000,000. You might feel like $50.
Right.
I mean, and so, I had told this story a bunch, but like I had a friend have to pull me to the side and be like, hey man, you need a new story, Craig. You have a terrible story about your life. Like you need a new story. And he sat down and he took like 25 minutes and created a new story with me. He's like, you're a great guy. You're loved in the community. You're an awesome father. It's like you do great work in the world, Craig. And I had this other story. I had this story that people hated me, women hated me. I'm a terrible father. It's just, but again, like I had this story that my that my ex-wife told me. I didn't have
Yeah.
my story. I didn't have my truth in me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I was making up a new story. My friend was just pointing out, like, Craig, this is the truth. You're a good guy. You're a good guy. And see, sometimes we just have this story stuck in our head that we are the rejected one.
Yeah.
Now, again, to go back to your power, part of you being empowered means you're strong enough to see your divinity, to see your divinity. But if we tell ourselves all day long, I am rejected, I'm the rejected one, I had this terrible childhood, where my dad lost his job and I went to this school. Like I had that same story as a kid. My dad lost his job once and I went to a school where, there was kids who were really wealthy and I certainly didn't, we didn't have much money and so like I know that feeling. I know that feeling. But if we come out of that and we say, hey, I'm not going to believe the story of rejection. I'm going to believe the truth that there's something good here that I am. But if you believe that old story that you are the rejected one, what you actually do is you become that self-fulfilling prophecy. You teach your body rejection.
Yeah.
You're not seeing the fullness of what you are. Part
Yeah.
of that anger and that fire is letting that fire burn within you and seeing all of you and not rejecting any of it. And so that's a great question for you. Can you see all of yourself and not reject any of it? Not reject any of it. Can you feel it? Can you experience it? And sometimes like with rejection, like rejection holds on not because so many people in life rejected us, but because we believe the story of rejection. And when we
Mhm.
believe that, we actually reject ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't see our resiliency. We don't see our strength. We don't see our beauty. We don't see our innocence. We don't see our creativity. We don't see our light. We see only the poor me.
Well,
And
and
that's, oh my God, there's a huge me here. So say that
it
again. I'm sorry.
it actually acted as a I think I took it on as a protection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When I
And so
played
that's,
small, it was a way for me not to get hurt or not to get put
yeah,
upon.
yeah.
So yeah.
And so this is a very interesting question for us as spiritual beings is, am I willing to continue to open my heart despite being hurt in the past? Because the ego will tell us, I was hurt, you should close down. You were hurt, close down. Like that's what you should do. That's what the ego will just tell you. It's just, let me tell you, it's just a program. It's just an unconscious movement. Somebody hurt me once upon a time, and so I'm going to shut down. I'm going to shut down. Now I'm going to tell you a silly story, but just to make it kind of fun here. But two silly stories. But once upon a time, um, I was with my brother, and I loved my oldest brother, and I loved him so much. And one time we got in an argument. There was some drinking involved. We were like teenage boys, and he took my head. He grabbed me by the hair. He took my skull and he smashed me into the hood of a car, and it dented the car. So just like dented it with my whole forehead, like a big dent. It wasn't a little dent; it was a giant dent. But again, just to make it fun, like a fun story. Um, I could have went on from that moment. I will never trust my brother again. I'll never be friends with him. Like I'll never trust anyone. I'll never trust men again. I'll never trust my brother's significantly larger than me. He got like the big genes in my family, but he's just like this big fella. And I have a choice. I can forgive him and have a brother, or I can be like, nope, he hurt me. I need to protect myself, and I'm going to protect myself forever and not have a brother. And I did the same thing, like with my first real girlfriend who broke my heart. I went to my teacher and said, I'll never love again. He burst out laughing. He burst out laughing. He laughed so hard. I was shocked how hard he laughed. But the ego comes up with this idea. And again, like the ego is not a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's just a program. But part of being awake is at some point we have to choose. And as spiritual beings, we have to ask ourselves, this is a very important question. All of us have been hurt here on planet Earth. There's no way we're getting out of this world. Like we can't even make it to middle school without being hurt. Hell, most of us can't make it through
Yeah.
through kindergarten,
Right.
without being hurt. It's like, dang, you get hurt in kindergarten. And we have to ask ourselves, if I get hurt in this world, when I get hurt, because I've been hurt, despite being hurt, am I going to open my heart and go forward, trusting in the innate goodness of life, or am I going to shut down? And the unconscious voice will tell us all to shut down. Will tell us all to shut down. But as awakened beings, like we get to choose. And see, this power of choice comes, is a manifestation of your spiritual power. And often our spiritual power is covered in hurt or anger. And I tell people this all the time, like anger is a great friend on the path. If you harness the power of anger, it has the ability to transmute, like anger can transmute into what the Buddha calls swift, decisive action. The swift, decisive action to say no to that old story, but to say yes to unconditionally loving every aspect of yourself. And so then you make it your life's work to go out and find every rejected place within you and to fully consciously meet it with an absolute love. And so, like, if we have something that has been persistent, we say, okay, this is what I have to commit my life to. Finding all the places inside that have been rejected, and I'm going to meet them with an absolute love. And so if there's more psychological healing work to do, more embracing to do, and or more saying no to that damn story, but you can't just say no. It's like, when you quit alcohol, you can't just be like, I'm going to quit drinking. You have to quit drinking, and then you have to go find new friends, and you have to change your behavior. You got to find something else to drink. It's like,
Right.
and you got to reorient your life around something new, or that old habit. Because again, the ego is just a giant habit. It just loves to go back to that old program. And so sometimes we just have to replace it. And so let me ask you, like, what do you do in life? Are you married right now? Are you in a relationship? Do you have a job?
Single, just left Los Angeles, being an actor for 30 years.
Oh my God. So you were an actor or trying to be an actor?
I was.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd done a lot, but I kept coming up against the
Yeah.
wall
Well,
of
and gosh,
rejection. And so,
like that,
I
that
left I left there, and yeah, without relationship or children. So
and
in
now
my
you're up in Seattle.
yeah, my mind was kind of set to, once I achieve this dream, then my life will open up, then my life will flourish,
Good.
then things. And so
Good.
that was my reaction to all of this. The only thing is what it led to was, at this point, of course, a feeling of like, oh, I didn't make it, a rejection. And in other words,
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand that all this stuff is coming up now
Good.
because,
Good.
but
Good.
I took myself away as an actual healing
Good.
choice,
Good.
not as a
Good. Good.
running
Because
away.
we need to look at this, because sometimes, like, we have these big ideas, and we have this cultural idea
Yeah.
that I'm going to move to LA, I'm going to be the star,
Yeah.
everyone's going to love me.
Yep.
And then it's like, if you ever meet those stars, a lot of times they're miserable human beings. They feel
Yeah.
isolated, they feel alone,
Yeah.
they're lost in themselves, they're just, dancing on a stage, and it's
Or it's
just
just
like,
never enough.
yeah, it's never enough. It's never enough, because that's the truth.
Yeah.
It's never enough. The outside thing is supposed to fail you. Literally, like, this is hardwired into reality. Is the outside world is supposed to let you down.
Huh.
It's supposed to. Like, it is literally supposed to let you down. Life is supposed to let you down. The reason being is, when you recognize this, then you start to look in the very place that every saint or sage, a great holy one, the sense it's the beginning of time. You gotta find inner peace and happiness within,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
outside of you. And I
Yeah.
know there's some modern day spiritual teachers trying to sell you the thing outside of you, but again, it will
No.
never make you happy.
No.
The outside thing is supposed to fail you. Now, sometimes, like, some of us, like, we like spend our whole life like chasing this one thing. The day you realize, I have failed at this, that is an excellent day. It may
Yeah.
not feel excellent, it may feel
No.
terrible, it may feel terrible, but what I call it is crushing defeat. Like, when we have crushing defeat of our egoic identity, when it is mortally wounded,
Yeah.
that's a great day. That's when you really begin to wake up on the path. When you really begin. Like, when I was young, see, I had this realization when I was really young. I just saw, God, there's nothing this outside world is going to give me. Nothing. Nothing. Now, look, I still go out and I play and I have adventures and this and that. But at the end of the day, I know happiness, peace, freedom is an inside job. It's an inside job. And it only comes after one has failed at life.
Yeah.
Some of us, there's a real problem is if we've had great success, then, this recognition that life will never complete us comes at a later date. And for others of us, we have like in science, when they do those tests, uh, intermittent reinforcement, like, well, we've had some success, it's like that can keep it on,
Yeah.
and like I've got a sister-in-law, and she tried it for 20 years or so, the Hollywood thing, and finally she's just like, I'm out of here. And
Yeah.
she actually moved up by you, up in Oregon, and she's just like, okay, it's a much better life. I'm going to find happiness here with myself and in nature, and just being a human, and stop chasing the
Yeah.
big screen thing. Now
Yeah.
let's flip it around a little bit though, because what's important, like if we really want to find the truth here, is for you to absolutely fall in love with you, for you to recognize that Brian is the most beautiful human on planet Earth, for you to see that, to see your goodness, to see your beauty, to see your innocence. And then, to be a fanboy, for Brian, to see his shadow and his struggles and his heartache, and to love it all, to love it all. Because there's the disillusionment of ego. But on the flip side, there's this total falling in love with oneself. And this is what I call being unrejectable, because you love you so fully and so completely. But in order for you to love you so fully and so completely, you have to be willing to get to know all of you. And the
Yeah.
problem with the actor's always trying to act through the mask, through the costume,
Yeah.
outward thing. It's like, no, like that's just the thing that comes and goes. Can you get to know what Brian is, the essence of Brian?
Yeah.
And when you know that fully, you see it's the most beautiful thing that has ever walked the earth. And then there's this funny thing that happens is when you find it within yourself, you start to see it everywhere. You start to see it everywhere. But the thing about rejection, the thing about walls, resistance, the thing about lacking power, all these things work together. And what I'm really inviting for you to do is to use that anger to knock down all the walls within yourself. So you see, so you know, so you love everything that's here. The good, the bad, the ugly. You love it all. You worship it all. And then you become this thing that's unrejectable. And someone says, you're a failed actor. You're like, that's all right. I'm this thing right here. Someone says,
Right.
you're the best. And it's like, I'm all right. I'm this thing that's here. Someone says, you're the worst. I hate you. I wish you were dead. You're like, that's all right. I'm this thing that's right here. This thing that's absolutely beautiful. And you see within this beauty, you see that you are on this stage of life. This stage of life, you are here walking about the earth, playing this dance and this role within Maya. And you see that it's okay. It's good to be you. And even though there has been outward failure, you see there's no failure, because there's the freedom for Brian to be Brian without any rejection. Whether it comes from the outside or not is irrelevant. There's no rejection on the inside. Is that making sense the way I'm describing that?
Yeah. I just don't necessarily know how.
Yeah. So let's make this very simple. Okay. So look, I like to go into the mud first. I like to take care of the mud first.
Yeah.
So it's the willingness to feel
Yeah.
every bit of rejection within you
Okay.
and to not turn away.
Okay.
And to not make a big story about it, but just to feel it, to get to know it, to become
Yeah.
absolute friends with it.
Okay. That's what I've been doing, is sitting with the, like, I just have a simple day job. I drive around and do delivery, and every neighborhood I drive through, every big home, you know, big nice houses, lots of money, lots of cars, whatever. I just let that kind of fall in on me, and the mind will say, you know, here's the things you could have had, here's the things you walked away from, whatever. And I move past that, usually to the hurt of it.
Yeah.
And I try to just let myself be with the hurt of it,
Yeah.
because that's what feels like needs or is asking for my attention.
It's asking for your attention, but okay, good.
But not to change it as much as just to, like you say, like, hold
Good.
it.
Now let's bring some hope and let's bring some power into that too, because I hear that, but
Okay.
sometimes when things don't shift, it's like we're missing a little something.
I feel like I'm doing a lot of soothing.
Okay, good. So soothing is good, but is there still like this thought that you walked away from something, this thought
It's
that you should have?
it's the powerlessness that is
uh,
left
Okay,
behind.
but hold on. Let's
Yeah.
just stay with the thoughts. So
Okay. Sorry.
these thoughts aren't the truth. So
Right.
sometimes like we make ourselves sick with untruthful thoughts. Like I could go, uh, like I have to think about my town. I could probably go find some place in my town where there's some nice houses, and I could drive around there. And if there's a thought within my head that I walked away from this or I should have one of these houses, see, I'm lying to myself.
Right.
Like I don't have a big house. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you step outside of the truth and you believe the story, then you're using the story of untruth to try to work with the pain within you. Like, we're starting off in a confused state to begin with.
Oh,
The
I see.
basic truth is you're
Yeah.
driving around in a car,
Yeah.
delivering. I've been a delivery guy before. I love being a delivery guy. I love it. It's one of my favorite jobs. It's
Yeah.
my favorite job. There's no responsibility. I don't have to take care of anybody.
Right.
I just take the box and put it in the
Yeah.
place. I'm sorry I'm laughing because it's making me
No,
but
that's
I've got to,
exactly it. It was great for me as an actor because I could run lines. Nobody's looking over my shoulder.
yeah. And okay, so look, so how about we stay in the truth?
The truth is simply that I am here. I'm driving.
Yeah.
This is,
There's
I mean,
no
you know,
problem.
yeah, exactly. It's only
So
a judgment that I carry that puts me into problem
yeah. So your mind is making up a story
and coming at me with it.
and
Yeah.
coming at you with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe if we look at that guy, if you take a moment and just look at that guy, what does that guy need?
The guy who comes at me.
Yeah, the guy who comes at you, he's the one that's creating this story
Yeah.
that your life is wrong, that you left something, that you failed. Like it's not even true that you failed at all. You're just doing something different now. Like, what does he need?
I just keep getting the word power. He
Good.
need he does
What
he
does
Yeah.
so he does need power. Does he need power so he can judge you more fully?
No, I guess I would say more like he needs approval for, he needs success.
So that's what he thinks he needs. He thinks he needs outward approval and outward success, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what he
We already
thinks he
talked
needs.
about that. That's not going to work.
No, because we
So
can't.
you said
Yeah.
he needs power. Let's go with that. With power, what does power look like?
Um, it actually is more like, it's a feeling of like content here, wholeness
Mhm.
here,
A wholeness here.
sufficiency here,
Yeah. Yeah. So he
and
needs the
not and
same thing
actually,
we're talking about before.
yeah.
He
So
needs,
it's like a sense of like, you know what, like there's a power to saying, you know, like you said, somebody says, "Oh, you're a failed actor," and then, you know, kind of laugh at that, like, no, I'm just like, that's not me. That I
yeah,
don't have to take that on, and there's a
yeah,
power in not taking
yeah,
that on, or
yeah.
taking on society's
Yeah. This
judgments, or
idea that I need a big house or I need to have a,
exactly that I should be somewhere other than what I
yeah,
am.
yeah. And so
But
so
trying to find
sometimes
that, yeah,
sometimes we have to have the power to say no to our own mind.
okay, yeah,
Because you keep blaming the society and these other people, like, because it's just you driving around with you in a
yeah.
car, and
No,
it's like,
it's just it's my mind's proof against me, and I'm,
yeah,
because I took it against myself. I'm trying to
yeah,
find through the weeds of it, like, okay,
yeah.
do I just like, is it, because I always thought that I needed to give myself that compassion and understanding, but this voice is literally coming at me, you know, negatively.
Well, we need to have compassion. We need to have understanding. We also need to have boundaries
Yeah,
over, places within our mind that are untruthful and out of alignment and spinning a story of the culture to you. Like, we have to have it all.
yeah,
And so there's got to be a boundary that says no to
yeah.
things that are untrue, and then yes to the truth. And I'm
Which,
going to tell you this, I'll be real blunt with you here. So this willingness to not reject anything, to be with it all, to meet it with love, to meet it with acceptance, to stand in your power, to have boundaries with the mind, to retrain your mind, to teach your mind that it is worthy just as it is, that it's good just as it is. And to know in your direct experience, like, you will not be happy until you know in your direct experience that what you are fundamentally, essentially, is good. And so instead of judging oneself and instead of being angry, we need to grab the power, the energy from those two forces and dedicate our life to finding the truth within us. In this journey, it's long, it's messy, it's confusing. And a lot of people go inward, then they go outward, then they go inward, and they go outward. And sometimes
yeah,
we just have to say, I'm just going to go inward and stay inward. And I'm going to focus on the truth within me. I'm going to stay with the truth until I find it. And this is really what the Buddha did when he sat down the Bodhi tree. He's like, look, I'm sitting down, I'm not getting up till I know the truth.
right,
And we have to have that same level of commitment within ourselves. And of course, it's going to require great compassion, great willingness, willingness to feel, the willingness to experience. But we also have to be willing to say no to bullshit in our mind, because our mind can just talk to us forever. it's like forever and ever and ever. It can tell us, you're no good, you're no good, you're no good. But at some point, we have to stand up to our mind and say, no to that. But like, hey, man, what do you really need? I need love. Okay, how about I give you some love? How about I give you some
yeah,
love? How
yeah,
about I give you some love?
yeah,
How about I give you some love? But we need to surrender our false stories. And like, like in the 10 Commandments, isn't there something about like, thou shalt not bow before false gods or worship
yeah,
false, like, this is what a false idol is a judge, is a critic. It's like, when we give that voice power and time and attention, when we believe it, when we debate with it, when we're arguing with it, but I'm talking about no argument, we just say no to it. But after we say no to it, then we have to say yes to the truth. But if we allow it to spin and we give it our time and attention, we let it to dominate us, that's the same as worshiping a false god. It's allowing the false god to rule you. And again, this is you taking your power back. So you have to stop bowing before this god, that's judging you, and this other god, the rejection. We need to say no to these two gods, to be able to look in the mirror with no mask and to see this absolute beauty that you are. Now, again, let me just say this before we're done tonight. On the way to you seeing your absolute beauty, you're probably going to come into contact with your absolute insecurity. And that insecurity needs to be loved to death. And again, what does that mean? It means you sit with the feeling of insecurity. The feeling of insecurity is often the feeling of the ground falling out from under you. So you're sitting with this ground falling out from under you. The voices in your mind will be screaming, you should be rich, you should be wealthy, you left, you gave up. It's like, I'm just going to sit and let the ground fall out from under me. And there's this hilarious thing that happens. I call it hilarious. Most people find it terrifying. They call it ego death and annihilation and all this other bullshit. But to me, it's a hilarious thing that happens. When you sit and you get comfortable with the ground falling out from under you, you discover this thing that the Buddha called the groundless ground. And it is so thrilling. It is so exciting. It's wondrous. It's amazing. It feels as if you are all of life. And all of life is dying and all of life is being reborn, all within you in this moment. And so the doorway to this is through sitting, opening, feeling, making love to insecurity, loving this thing to death. And as you do this, you wake up and it doesn't just feel like some blah experience. It will feel thrilling and so utterly alive, so utterly full. And when you look out at the world, you will see that you are on this grand stage and you'll get to be the actor. You get to act whatever you want to act with whoever is in front of you. And then you have this fun and this joy with life. And you see all of life is this grand play, this grand play. You get to be the true actor, the true being, the awake one in the world. It's like the first true actor is the awake one in the world. And so anyways, my friend, I'm going to encourage you to play with this,
Thank you so
Okay?
much.
It's a big deal. Yeah, of course. It's good to be with you. And Brian, thanks for coming forward. Thank you for having the courage to speak up and to say, I have a question. Because I forget to remind people we could do questions here. But anyways, Brian, thank you, my friend. You're going to keep opening. You're going to feel the insecurity. You're going to let it burn until you feel fully and utterly alive. Fully and utterly alive. And so if there's lots of tears, lots of emotion, lots of feeling, lots of movement of energy, you're doing it right. If there's lots of thoughts and pumping the brakes, then I'd say you're doing it not right. not totally wrong, but walk in the direction of the feeling. And what most people do is they just walk back into the direction of thoughts. And some people, like, they have these moments of awakening and then they just go and identify with their thoughts again. It's just like, oh, don't do that. Don't do that. Just stay with the direct experience of what's here in the deepest part of your being. And as you make love to this thing grows and the other thing dies. And the other thing dies. So anyways, you're on the right path, my friend. You're on the right path. I think your mind was just probably a little busy for you. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and we all have that. We all know that. We all know that. So anyways, good to be with you, Brian. Good to be with you, everyone. So nice. The retreat is live on the website. If anyone wants to sign up for that now, please do. A reminder, folks, this is a fun one. We're going into Mercury in retrograde. I think August 4th or something like that. The retreat will be during Mercury. So sign up early in the beginning. Make sure you have the link and all that. Make sure you check all the technical stuff, because you know what happens with Mercury. Communication gets off. So anyways, so much love to all of you. Good night, everyone. Good to be with you. Bye for now.